You have an older sister, Aimee.
Yes.
So why did she choose not to participate in the show?
She deemed doing a show on MTV as like low-hanging fruit. You know, I'm not going to be seen like riding coattails. Wanted to be relatively private and obscure.
Yeah.
We don't talk.
We don't talk.
Okay, great.
We're just really different.
Yeah.
She doesn't understand me. I don't understand her.
Aimee wasn't a part of it, and so it made me feel terrible. She doesn't like it, no.
I'm not some weirdo, depressed daughter that's afraid of the world that locks herself in her room all day. We definitely had our rough times.
Were you ever embarrassed by your family?
People that don't know, I'm just going to catch them up. Aimee is your
Oldest, yeah.
Yeah, Aimee is your oldest daughter, who's also a very talented singer.
Was Mom mad when you decided not to participate? Do you have any regrets?
I was finding things very, very difficult.
For casual fans, Aimee barely exists. In countless episodes of The Osbornes, her absence was an open secret. There were 4 children, but only 3 appeared in the family's circus act. If you blinked, you'd miss the clues. Sharon casually referring to Aimee in passing. Ozzy once muttering something about a daughter who didn't want cameras, or tabloids tossing her name into the gossip pile like a footnote.
There may be no secrets in the Osborne family, but there is a mystery, and her name is Aimee, the daughter who moved out of the house rather than take part in the Osborne show, to talk for the first time publicly about her feelings and her family. There's more to the Osbornes than you see on TV.
For those who dug deeper, Aimee became a kind of myth, a phantom daughter who rejected celebrity life while the rest of her family built an empire around it. But here's the question that keeps people up at night. Why? Why would Aimee, the eldest daughter, the one who lived to the very beginnings of Ozzy's fame, choose to vanish while everyone else leaned in? Was it rebellion, a conscious act of survival, or something darker inside the Osborne household that she refused to be a part of? To unravel Aimee's story, you have to first understand the Osborne world she grew up in.
For the first time, daughter Aimee speaks out. What do you most want people to know about you?
That I'm not some weirdo, depressed daughter that's afraid of the world that locks herself in her room all day.
By the time Aimee was born in 1983, Ozzy was already the Prince of Darkness. Black Sabbath had cemented him as one of rock's most notorious frontmen, and his solo career was spiraling into both genius and chaos. Drugs, alcohol, arrests, biting the head off a bat. Ozzy's life was the stuff of myth. But to Aimee, he was just dad. And that's where the contradictions began. Imagine being a little girl trying to form an identity when your father is simultaneously a rock god, a walking tabloid headline, and a broken man struggling to stay alive. Ozzy has admitted himself that his early years as a father weren't his best. He was present physically, but emotionally, the drugs and chaos often pulled him away. Aimee grew up watching a father oscillate between tender silliness and terrifying unpredictability. Then there was Sharon. Unlike Ozzy, Sharon was laser-focused, a strategist, a woman who turned chaos into empire. To the world, she was a fiery red-haired matriarch who kept the Osborne circus together. To her children, she was both protector and drill sergeant. Kelly has openly admitted Sharon could be controlling.
You know, I just didn't choose to do the show. That's the only thing that I think that's different about me and my family.
Why would you not want to participate with the rest of the family?
It's kind of like, okay, I want to be a singer.
Perfect.
And I felt if I would have stayed with the Osbornes and done the whole Osborne thing, I felt as though maybe I would have been typecasted right away before I had a chance to experience other things.
For Aimee, Sharon was a complicated figure. On the one hand, Sharon was a mother who kept everything functioning, the reason Ozzy survived multiple overdoses and career implosions. On the other, she was a force of relentless publicity, constantly shaping the Osborne brand, forever pushing the family into the spotlight whether they liked it or not. And that spotlight is exactly what Aimee wanted no part of. By 2001, when MTV came knocking, Aimee was 18. This was supposed to be the family's big payday, their chance to reinvent themselves for a new millennium. Sharon knew it would work. She smelled ratings before a single frame was shot. Ozzy, bewildered as always, agreed because Sharon insisted. Jack and Kelly were teenagers, vulnerable, but also secretly excited at the idea of fame. And Aimee? She wanted nothing to do with it. Here's the gossip. When the MTV crew first arrived to set up cameras in the Osborne home, Aimee reportedly walked through the chaos, took one look at the equipment, and muttered, "I'm not living in a zoo." Those close to the family claimed she packed her things within days and moved out. Some say she stayed with friends. Others claim Sharon arranged a small apartment nearby. What's certain is that while millions of viewers tuned in to watch the Osbornes eat, fight, cry, and laugh, Aimee was absent. Not just absent, erased. No camera shots. No blurred faces in the background. No cameo appearances. She was the ghost daughter, the invisible sibling.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I really don't, because I'm more reserved and my private life to me is very important.
And yet, her absence was louder than her presence could have been. Fans began asking questions. Was Aimee estranged from the family? Did she hate her parents? Did Sharon push her away because she didn't fit the brand? The rumors snowballed. Some tabloids claimed Aimee despised Kelly. Others whisper about explosive family fights that made living under the same roof impossible. Over the years, Kelly herself admitted tensions. In one raw interview, Kelly confessed she and Aimee weren't close, saying, "We're just really different. She doesn't understand me, and I don't understand her." Imagine that. Two sisters growing up under the same roof, but one becoming a reality star, the other recluse, their bond fractured by cameras. But Aimee wasn't idle. While her family turned their dysfunction into primetime gold, Aimee quietly built a music career of her own. Under the name ARO, her initials Aimee Rachel Osbourne, she released moody, haunting tracks that couldn't have been more different from her family's brash TV antics.
Was Mom mad when you decided not to participate?
She was hurt, and we definitely had our rough times for a couple of months with our disagreements. But it really was nothing to do with me not loving them and not, wanting the world to know that I am a part of this family.
Her music was introspective, ethereal, the sound of someone who lived on the edges, observing, never joining the chaos. In interviews, she admitted the show would have destroyed her. She needed privacy, control over her identity, and the idea of having teenage heartbreaks, awkward phases, and personal struggles broadcast to the world was unbearable. And here's where the story deepens. While Kelly and Jack used fame as therapy, openly discussing addictions, rehab, weight struggles, and public meltdowns, Aimee processed her pain in silence. She wasn't willing to give the public that access. Some sources close to her say she saw what fame did to her father, the addictions, the humiliation, the endless mockery, and decided she would never let it consume her. Others argue her mother's iron grip over the family brand made her feel suffocated, and the only way to survive was to walk away entirely. The most haunting part? Sharon herself has admitted that Aimee's choice created lasting scars. In a rare, vulnerable moment, Sharon confessed on the talk that Aimee hated the idea of sharing her life with the world and moved out at 16 to escape the cameras. Sharon's eyes welled with tears as she admitted, "It was probably the most heartbreaking thing she could have done to me." That line alone reveals the emotional earthquake Aimee's absence caused inside the Osborne home.
What was that conversation like? Did they say we're moving on, or did you say it's time for you? Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I feel like that would be nerve-wracking to go to your mom and be like, we're going to go somewhere else and find a different manager.
Can you see Kim Kardashian telling Chris?
Never.
I'm now
Chris would not allow it.
The family became richer, more famous, more chaotic than ever, but at the cost of losing a daughter's presence. And the whispers didn't stop there. Over the years, gossip columns fueled speculation about Aimee's mental health, secret feuds, and even claims that she and her siblings barely speak. Fans wondered if Ozzy himself felt guilt. Did the Prince of Darkness ever wish his missing daughter had joined the circus? Or did he quietly admire her strength to say no when no one else could? In one drunken interview, Ozzy allegedly muttered, "She's a smart one. She got out." Whether that's true or not, the line rings like prophecy. The deeper you go into Aimee's story, the more you realize her disappearance from the Osbornes isn't just a footnote. It's the key to understand the entire family. Because in many ways, Aimee's silence was its own kind of rebellion, just as loud as Kelly's outbursts or Jack's breakdowns. While her family broadcast every high and low to the world, Aimee built her life away from the cameras. A refusal, a rejection, a statement. Not me, not this way. So why did Aimee vanish? Was it teenage rebellion?
Well, this is also another thing that I respect her for. Her daughter Aimee.
That's what I would, yeah.
Yeah, never wanted, no interest. Ever had any? Was it ever a discussion?
Yes, it was in the beginning. And
for those people that don't know, I'm just going to catch them up. The Aimee is your
oldest, yeah.
Yeah, Aimee is your oldest daughter, who's also a very talented singer.
She is, and writer.
Who even I became aware when I became a big fan of the Osbornes reality show that there's another kid that we're not seeing.
By the early 2000s, the Osborne family had already been living in the middle of a hurricane for decades. Ozzy had survived drugs, alcohol, arrests, rehab stints, and more near-death experiences than most mortals could count. Sharon had clawed her way into becoming one of the most powerful women in music. Kelly and Jack were loud, funny, rebellious, and itching to step into their own spotlight. And then MTV showed up with cameras. The pitch was simple: a reality show about the wildest, weirdest family in rock and roll. At the time, reality television was still fresh. Sure, there was a real world and a handful of Doka-style experiments, but nothing like what MTV was proposing. They want to put cameras inside the Osborne mansion 24/7, capturing every argument, every laugh, every breakdown. The network saw chaos, and chaos was money. For Sharon, the idea was electrifying. She had always believed the Osbornes were misunderstood. People saw Ozzy as a prince of darkness, the unhinged madman biting bad heads off on stage. Sharon wanted the world to see another side. Ozzy the goofy dad who couldn't work the TV remote. Ozzy the tender husband who wrote love notes in scribbles only she could read. Ozzy the man who was both fragile and hilarious. This show, she thought, would humanize him. It would also, let's be honest, make them a fortune. Kelly and Jack were immediately on board. Kelly, with her pink hair, sharp tongue, and rebellious streak, knew this was her stage. Jack, sarcastic and witty, loved the idea of mocking the absurdity of his own family. They weren't just willing, they were excited. But Aimee, she froze. The thought of cameras invading the home she already struggled to survive and was unbearable. She had lived through enough public humiliation as Ozzy's daughter. Now she was expected to live her teenage years as entertainment for millions? To Aimee, it felt like signing a contract to give away the last shred of herself she had left. Sharon begged her. She promised it would be fun, that it would bring them closer, that the world would finally understand them. Kelly and Jack teased her, telling her not to be so dramatic. Ozzy, half in, half out of the conversation, mumbled something about how it might not be so bloody bad. But Aimee knew. She knew that once the cameras rolled, there would be no going back. So she made a decision that shocked everyone. She walked away. To this day, the story of how Aimee left the Osborne house when MTV moved and remains one of the family's most whispered about chapters. Sharon has spoken about it with tears in her eyes.
Yeah.
And was that hard? Was that
very, very hard on me because we were traveling all over the world. We were doing a million things and Aimee wasn't a part of it. And so it made me feel terrible because I didn't have my whole family. And she just didn't want the attention. She was, 18. It's a tough age for a girl. She didn't want it.
And still kind of doesn't, right?
She doesn't like it, no. She loves writing, she loves singing, but she doesn't want to be a pop star.
Right.
She wants to be a professional singer and writer. That's it. She doesn't want to be, she's not looking for fame and power. She's happy doing what she does.
And she's an artist.
Yeah.
Even now, I know you're doing a podcast and stuff with your family, and I would think, I didn't want to be in front of the camera at all. I was a teacher. But this to me feels different, like just hanging out with my dad. It's not really a job, or I don't see it as a job or working. So even now with the podcast, she doesn't want to be a part. No.
Aimee packed her things and moved out at just 16 years old. Imagine that. A teenage girl choosing solitude over the warmth of her family because she couldn't stomach the world watching her family fall apart in real time. She loved them, but she loved herself enough to leave. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. While Aimee vanished into quiet apartments and secret studios, the rest of the family exploded into fame like never before. The Osbornes debuted in 2002, and overnight, the world became obsessed. Audiences couldn't get enough of Sharon yelling at the dogs, Kelly arguing with everyone, Jack's sarcastic one-liners, and Ozzy wandering the house like a dazed but lovable ghost. It was raw, funny, messy, and unlike anything on TV at the time. And it was a hit, a massive, culture-shifting hit. Within weeks, The Osbournes was the most-watched show on MTV, breaking ratings records and turned the family into international stars. Sharon went from music manager to global television personality. Kelly launched a music career and a fashion line. Jack became the face of MTV for a generation. And Ozzy? He became America's unlikely sweetheart. The Prince of Darkness turned into the bumbling, adorable dad everyone wanted. But here's where the story turns. While the cameras brought fame, they also brought exposure. The fights, the breakdowns, the addictions, it was all laid bare. And the irony was impossible to ignore. The daughter who refused the cameras, who walked away from the circus, became the one the audience was most curious about. Where was Aimee? Fans obsessed over the missing Osborne. Articles speculated endlessly. Was she estranged from her family? Was she embarrassed by them? Was she secretly wild and rebellious too? Some even wondered if she existed at all, because MTV never once mentioned her on the show. She was erased, as though she'd never been part of the family. And yet her absence screamed louder than anything. Behind the scenes, Sharon and Ozzy struggled with a decision to protect her privacy. They agreed not to mention her on camera, out of respect. But that choice only deepened the mystery. Aimee became a ghost in her own family story. Present in memory, absent in reality. Meanwhile, in her solitude, Aimee was quietly crafting her own path. She focused on her music, recording demos, writing lyrics, experimenting with sounds that were the polar opposite of her father's heavy metal. Her music was atmospheric, moody, cinematic, the kind of songs that reveal the inner world she had always kept hidden. Aimee was building an identity no one could touch. And yet, the pain of separation was real. Sharon has admitted how heartbreaking it was to see Aimee leave. Imagine being a mother, watching one child walk away while the others embrace the spotlight. Sharon carried the guilt of that decision for years, tore between the success the show brought and the daughter it drove away. Ozzy, too, has spoken about how much he missed her, though in typical Ozzy fashion, his words came out like scrambled fragments. I missed her. She's my girl, you know? My Aimee. The sentiment was clear, even if the language was garbled, but the decision was final. Aimee stayed away, and the Osbournes became a global sensation without her. The show won an Emmy. It redefined reality TV. It made the family richer, more famous, and more exposed than ever before. And Aimee? She became the family's secret. The missing piece. The quiet rebellion. Side stories from this era are legendary. There's the infamous moment when Ozzy, bewildered by the remote control, sat shouting at the TV for 10 minutes. A clip that went viral before viral was even a thing. There's Kelly's feud with Christina Aguilera, splashed across tabloids, while Jack was sneaking into nightclubs and making headlines of his own. Sharon battled cancer during the filming of the show, her fight documented on screen with raw vulnerability. The Osbournes weren't just a family anymore. They were a soap opera the world couldn't turn off. And through it all, Aimee remained silent. No interviews, no appearances, no cameos, just whispers. She became the anti-celebrity in a family defined by oversharing. And in that silence, she carved out a power her siblings couldn't touch. Because here's the truth. While the world laughed and gawked at the Osbournes' chaos, Aimee was the one who saw it coming. She understood that fame would magnify the dysfunction, not fix it. She understood that privacy was the only way to protect her sanity. And she was right. As the years went on, the cameras that once seemed like salvation began to tear at the family's seams. Sharon and Ozzy's marriage was tested. Kelly and Jack battled addictions, and the world eventually grew tired of the spectacle. But Aimee, she remained untouched. When the final credits rolled on the Osbournes in 2005, the family was left staring at the silence of a house without cameras. For 4 years, their every laugh, fight, and stumble had been broadcast to millions. Now, the world moved on. The MTV crews packed up, and the Osbournes were left to pick up the pieces of their lives. For Kelly and Jack, the transition was brutal. They had become household names before they were even old enough to fully understand what fame meant. Kelly had released a pop album, landed on magazine covers, and walked red carpets. But when the show ended, so did much of that momentum. The music industry, ruthless as ever, wasn't kind to a reality TV star trying to be taken seriously. She spiraled into addiction, battling prescription drugs and alcohol, lashing out at critics, and carrying the weight of a persona the world loved to mock. Jack, too, struggled. He'd been the sarcastic comic relief of the show, but behind the scenes, he was drowning. Drugs became his escape, a way to silence the pressure of being Jack Osbourne from MTV. His eventual diagnosis with multiple sclerosis years later would shift his priorities. But at this point, he was simply another young celebrity unraveling. Sharon, who had become a global television star herself, tried to hold it all together. Her battle with colon cancer had been one of the most emotional arcs on the Osbournes, and it earned her a new level of respect from fans. But Sharon was also fiercely ambitious. She parlayed the fame into hosting gigs, judging the X Factor and America's Got Talent, and building her own brand outside of Ozzy's shadow. Yet privately, she carried the scars of having sacrificed one daughter's trust, Aimee, for the sake of show that, in her own words, nearly destroyed them. And Ozzy was lost. The cameras had turned his days wandering into comedy. But behind that confusion was a man whose decades of drug and alcohol abuse had left his brain fogged, his body weak, and his soul fractured. He loved Sharon, he loved his kids, but when the show ended, the quiet almost killed him. For years, Ozzy thrived on chaos. Without it, he didn't know who he was. He slipped back into old habits, and Sharon found herself once again trying to save him from himself. And what of Aimee, the missing Osbourne, the invisible daughter? While her family crashed, burned, and rebuilt themselves in public, she was living a parallel life. Quiet, deliberate, creative. She had never participated in the show, and because of that, she avoided its fallout. While Kelly was tabloid fodder and Jack was spiraling, Aimee was working in studios, writing music, and forging a career that belonged to her alone. Her band, ARO, named after her initials, Aimee Rachel Osbourne, began to take shape. The music was haunting, layered, cinematic, the polar opposite of her father's wild metal anthems. Listening to Aimee's voice was like stepping into another world, ethereal, intimate, secretive. For those who discovered her work, it felt like finding the diary of a girl who had walked away from fame to tell her story on her own terms. And yet, there was a shadow in every note. Because no matter how far Aimee traveled from the chaos of the Osbornes, she could never fully escape her last name. Every interview circled back to the show she refused to join, to the family she chose to leave. Journalists were fascinated not by her music, but by her absence. Why didn't you do the show? Do you regret it? Are you close with your family? The very thing she had sacrificed her youth to avoid, being defined by her father's fame, haunted her still. Meanwhile, the cracks in the Osbourne family deepened. Ozzy relapsed more than once, admitting later that during those years he was a wreck. Sharon, ever the fighter, endured public humiliation when his affairs came to light years later. Kelly, struggling with body image, lashed out at critics and fought to rebuild her life through fashion and TV. Jack sobered up, found stability, and later became a devoted father, but his journey was long and bruising. And Aimee? She remained the quiet counterpoint. While the others shouted, she whispered. While the others bare their souls to cameras, she let her art speak. In many ways, she became a mirror of what the Osbournes might have been without fame. Still messy, still complicated, but hidden from the world's endless gaze. One of the most telling stories from this period came from Sharon herself. In an interview, she admitted that Aimee moving out during the Osbournes was one of her greatest regrets. She felt she couldn't live in a house that was doing what we were doing. She just hated it, Sharon confessed. And it broke my heart. I miss her still. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from a matriarch who so often appeared unshakable. Sharon knew she had made a choice, family versus fame, and part of her would never stop wondering if she had chosen wrong. For Ozzy, the guilt was different. He often spoke about Aimee with confusion, stumbling over his words but making his love clear. In one interview, he admitted that he barely knew how to connect with her after she left. She's my baby girl. I miss her. I don't know what to say. She's strong, you know? Stronger than me. It was Ozzy in his purest form. Messy, heartfelt, raw. But here's the irony. As the show's legacy began to fade and reality TV moved on to newer scandals, Aimee's decision began to look less like rebellion and more like prophecy. She had seen what the cameras would do, and she had been right. Her siblings had scars to prove it. She had walked away, and in doing so, she had preserved her sanity. Yet that didn't mean life was easy. Walking away from the circus meant walking into obscurity. Her music career was niche, her fame microscopic compared to the global empire her family had built. But perhaps that was the point. Aimee wasn't chasing arenas, awards, or headlines. She was chasing freedom. And for her, that was worth more than all the MTV fame in the world. Life after the Osbournes was messy for everyone, a patchwork of triumphs, failures, and reconciliations. But the great untold story of this era wasn't the chaos of Kelly's scandals or Sharon's talk shows or even Ozzy's relapses. It was in Aimee's quiet refusal, her silent stand, her determination to live life on her own terms. Because sometimes the loudest statement is the one never broadcast at all.